Okay, hello and welcome. Today we're exploring obstacles and possibilities in practicing deliberate conversation and dialogue in a corporate environment. And we will immerse ourselves in the experience of genuine conversation, attempting at creating a space where ideas can flow and perspectives can intertwine and understanding can deepen. And our focus here isn't to find quick solutions, but embrace the process itself and to allow for possibilities to emerge as a result of that process. And together, me and SiewOnn here will practice the power of attentive listening, authentic sharing, and open-minded exploration, and allowing it all to unfold in an environment where every voice is valued and where collective wisdom can emerge. And in essence, this workshop is your opportunity to practice the art of dialogue, and it is a container in which we can engage and learn towards mastering dialogue. So let's embrace the principles of openness, curiosity, and respect as we get going with the conversation. So let's just fire that conversation off with one question, SiewOnn. What comes up for you as being significant when you consider your own experiences of having conversations in corporate environments?
Yes, thanks for the opening. As you share in your opening, there are a lot of thoughts come to me. I think you say a thing about we are not here for the quick solution. And that observation is the essence for our challenge in bringing deliberate conversation in the corporate. For my own experience, in most corporate, we care very much about outcomes, result, as quick as possible. And in most situations, that is the focus.
Yeah.
And I'm actually quite curious, any new insight that we can have through the deliberate conversation to kind of bring away from my limiting belief, because we are focusing on quick result. Therefore, we face challenge in bringing deliberate conversation in a corporate environment.
Yeah. So I'm starting thinking about two different kinds of solutionizing in corporate environments. That the obvious one is where we're trying to solve a problem that is within the organization context, and where we kind of skip out on the exploring part because we're so focused and kind of going right towards what we think the solution is. But the other part is me thinking, and I think I've been through my life a little bit of an organizational rebel. So I've always tried to find things the company can change on a structural, cultural level that needs to change. Those aspects are it's easy to be very emotionally attached to those ideas. So it might be hard to have conversations without pushing the agenda, because the agenda is so much more personal than just solving a problem that the company poses. So that's what comes up for me, kind of a history of having conversations, being too pushy, having a personal agenda that was emotionally attached, and then exploring what less emotionally attached to the agenda is, so that you can have that conversation, and how that changes everything, from being difficult to being more relaxed and not trying to change anything.
Yeah. thanks for sharing your experience. I pick up two things from what you share. I think the first thing you share about there's a tendency to fix things.
Yes.
And second thing you share is possibility you have your own personal agenda. And I have observed myself having similar behavior. And it's kind of like we want the outcome so that we feel that we have contributed to the company and also to our own career. So the outcome is something that we want a lot, or at least I want a lot. And as you share your experience, I can see that sometimes it's possible that different people have different perception of what is a challenge. Because we said that we want to introduce deliberate conversation in a corporate environment. Some people say that it's necessary. Some may have different opinion. And it seems to me that we all in a very black and white, whether is it pro or against. Because I think in some situation, when the situation is very murky or not so clear cut, I think before today, I think in the past few months, if we observe the internet and the social media, there's a debate on whether people should come back to office, right?
Yeah.
And it seems that most discussion is very generalized, whether to pro or against the idea. And seldom talk about the situation.
Yeah. Then I make up that it's a lot about not wanting change as well. Even when moving to the working remotely, there was some unhappy people as well, but they shifted after a while. A lot of them shifted after a while. But it's really the combination of things. Like it's a strength to be able to evolve processes by working remotely and being able to do things better, even if you're not remote anymore. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this. It's towards the fixation of having either or, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail. It's like our tendency is either or, and less of yes and.
Yeah. Yeah, the conversation seems to show up around the either and or, and not around what we've learned from it or what the pros and cons with different approaches are, and what a middle ground might look like. So we don't really get to explore the possibilities that are there, or the positive effects that have been, because it's so polarized that I do not want to go back to work, to the workplace.
I want to bring back to our topic, right? So the topic is about the challenges and the possibility of deliberate conversation in a corporate. I think we share a bit of the challenge, the either or thinking. I will call it black and white thinking. And you also bring up another challenge, like the habit. So habit is also what we experience as a challenge. And as a person with that habit, I can empathize, right? Because either or is like clear cut, right? It's like yes and no. Yes or no, sorry. So when we say that someday we work in office, someday we work remotely, or some people we work in office, some people we work remotely, it becomes like very complicated. I think besides against our habit, I also sense that there is some underlying assumption.
So you're leaning towards an underlying assumption of mine in that expression.
Yes, because because the behavior is we prefer either or, right? So black and white. And beside the habit or the past incident, I kind of feel that there is underlying assumption and belief.
Yeah. So I kind of looking at the black and white, and I don't think that people do think that much black and white, but I think people can show up black and white if the conversation takes a certain route, if that makes sense. If the agenda, going back to kind of the organization change conversation, if there's a certain push, then the response becomes more black and white. But if you're able to step into that conversation in a different way, then the grayscale opens up. So the challenge is probably to open the conversation up so that you get the nuances instead of the already fixed polarities that might be there, or the resistance to change, or whatever there might be there that just maintains the status quo. And then we're back to the idea of dialogue, that it's in the dialogue, you're not there to push an agenda and achieve something. You're just there to have the dynamics in a conversation so that the nuances are allowed to show up. And that might change us. If I'm at a certain polarity in a conversation, if I'm allowed to relax and listen to things so that I can see other perspectives, then my perspectives are bound to shift in that conversation.
So what I hear, I pick up a few things from what you shared just now. I think you say about the importance of how you show up. And then you offer a kind of a solution. I actually want us to explore what's behind the way we show up, because I mean, the way we show up probably coming from habit and probably some assumption, some fear. And I want to acknowledge the possible fear. Because, for example, let's say I want to introduce deliberate conversation in a company. And in my first suggestion, maybe the idea is like not very well received. Maybe some people say, a few people say yes, and then majority, let's say, silent. So if that is happening, my immediately feeling is this idea maybe is not well received. And then it triggers the instinct of fight or flight. Do I want to push further, or I drop it and then move on to something else? I think as a if I were an employee, the response on the fight or flight, like I usually will move on to an easier topic, because this topic about introducing different concepts in company seems to be belonging to somebody else, like HR or managers. So for if I were an ordinary employee, then I would say that why take on this fight? Why not just move on?
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, there's a part of me thinking that there's something in our experiences or preferences or psychology that says that this is the route to go, so that you want to push that conversation as an agenda, and you could easily switch to something else that might work better. But there's also part of me saying that why not stay with it? But there's a way of staying with it without pushing the agenda and just exploring the responses. So if the topic is unsafe to be had, there's always a topic around the lack of safety that is perceived in that moment. So it's not really about the original topic anymore, but it's about the lack of safety that experienced in that moment. But they are still linked, even if you switch the conversation, because it changes how you relate to the original topic. But that wouldn't be pushing. And maybe you can't have that safety conversation either. Maybe it's so loaded, then there's a point where you're pushing too hard as well, when you need to let go of something. So that's three options. And something else that comes up for me is kind of what's the patterns of that group you're talking to, and past experiences, conversations, and how that might fit in. What's the patterns that keep showing up? And that's a fourth way to continue the conversation.
I think I want to bring our conversation to our own personal experience and sharing our own personal example. I want to acknowledge the fear that I had in the past. And so I share a bit of the past experience, the fear, right? I think you talk about the psychological safety. And when I don't have psychological safety, or maybe I perceive there's lack of psychological safety, and for me to move forward, so if I will not back away and I want to move forward with certain topic, I find myself that I need a lot of courage, and also like I'm very close to the topic that I want to bring up. For example, let's say if we will have a conversation whether to have remote work or hybrid or fully back to office, I personally very close to this topic. It's not that obviously there is something that I relate to this topic, right? Personally, I see that this topic of the form of the office kind of related to the future. And I can see the different perspective, like whether to go back to office, to fully remote or hybrid, right? I can see all the point, right? The way I see is more of how I related to work. You see, in many, many years, I have been working for almost 30 years. Working means going to office. And from the last 3 years, I have a glimpse of a different meaning of work. I work outside of the office because we are not allowed to go back to office. And we still get some work done. So now, when the situation is changed, so there is a dynamic between staying where we are during COVID-19, or some people say that let's go back to office like pre-COVID. To me, the meaning of the question is not about going back to office. The meaning is about what is my relationship with work? Is it that the under assumption is work means in office? So what I'm trying to share is to kind of work with fear, I must find passion in the topic. Or what is my relationship with the topic? I feel that if I'm passionate, I can kind of put my fear aside and trying a different way to communicate the idea about the topic. So that is my experience.
I'm curious, when you say passionate about something, to be able to find the courage to challenge that fear, what does that mean? The passion, how does that show up for you?
So, of course, the fear is there, right? Because it could be perceived negatively. So, for me, to overcome the fear, there must be something I drawn to the subject that I feel that is important. For many years, I feel that going office is not just a bed of roses, right? We have water cooler talk, we have gossip, we have different activity in the office, right? I mean, I don't have to name it. We all have different experience. So I find that going back to office or not, it's not about the office. It's first thing is a question of how I perceive work. Secondly, there is an underlying question. Who has power? I mean, in office, it's very clear, right? The one with the big office, with the corner office, with the office with windows, or the bigger table, that is the symbol of power. And now, if we have hybrid or remote, there's no such thing. I mean, we can get a wide lens webcam, that's it. There's no such thing called bigger office. We can't see. We can only see the office through the lens of the webcam. Right? I can even have a virtual background like what I have. I have the earth as the office. I mean, how much bigger can it be? So for me, right, sometimes the topic that we have in mind are not the only topic. There could be underlying assumption that I share, right? And the belief and certain passion, right?
It's also intertwined. It's hard to say what is what, which makes me think about relating as a much more central thing. How do I relate to things? Like, for example, if your commute is a hassle and you don't like it, that's how you relate to commuting. But commuting could be a moment to relax, and maybe listen to an audiobook, or a moment of meditation, or it could be a positive experience. But if we're relating negatively, then going back to the office is a negative thing. And same thing with every small element that changes how we relate to every moment almost.
So I think you share a different perspective on a positive topic like whether to go back to office. If I'm going to relate it to what you share in the beginning, in deliberate conversation, we are not about quick solutioning. I mean, I think we have shared different perspective on a potential topic of whether to go back to office. And I can empathize people with power. They want to make a quick decision, whether to go back, to stay where we are, or hybrid, whatever decision, right? And skip the communication of meaning, assumption, belief, or if we skip that, I can see that regardless of which option is the final one, some people will be unhappy. Unhappy because it's beyond the pros and cons. Unhappy because my opinion is not being considered. So when people say that let's make a decision and move on, it's potentially, it creates impression that somebody's opinion or perspective are not important.
Yeah.
And that there are implications depending on whose opinion are being ignored.
Yeah. I definitely find that perspectives being respected or found out, the curiosity to know what kind of perspective I would hold, that's much more interesting than the decisions themselves. So if there's a decision around something that I don't agree with, the problem is bigger. The bigger problem is the lack of finding out the perspective. But if my perspective has been shared, I know that there's been a consideration, and then it's much easier to adapt. So the lack of being heard becomes very important.
Yes. So we can see that the direct conversation, it seems to be a good idea. The challenge could be many, like some people prefer quick solution. Some people want to be heard. Some people want people to consider their perspective. So these are the challenges. And the options seem to be, there could be different options, right? I sense that the quick solution is still the overarching container. How can we deliver the outcome or result that we want as soon as possible? I mean, I'm not trying to say that this is not important or kind of like push it aside. This is still one of the many things we still hold very high. Do you have a different perspective on this overarching goal?
Are we what we hold high? Are we still referring to work from home or from office?
No. What I'm trying to say that so far we share the challenges of introducing deliberate conversation in office, right? We talk about the desire to have quick result and the implication of ignoring some opinion, because it's kind of like they are actually opposing force, right? One force wants us to have quick outcome result as quickly as possible, and the other force is people are resented because their opinion or position are not considered. And if we are going to explore the options, I don't want us to ignore the first thing that we share. We still hold the quick result very high. We still want that. That's my assumption. We still want the quick result.
Yeah. So I'd like to challenge that assumption. I think that's it depends on who we are. I think it's culturally dependent to a degree. But
why don't we take our current position? We don't have to assume somebody's decision. Take the position that we currently have. So from my perspective, the quick result is still important. And that is something not negotiable, because we not only have the culture, we also have external factor that is at play. If we are not delivering quick result, we may lose business, and therefore there's no such discussion anymore.
Yeah. What's coming up for me is the idea of agility, or even decentralizing decisions, is to be able to make quicker decisions to reach solutions faster, which might mean not including that many in decisions. So there's both kind of the ability to reach a quick result or a resolve, and the possibility of the conversation. And I'm feeling, as I say that's the mind wants to find a black and white solution to when to apply that, but that's not easy.
Yes. I realized that what I share become like very contentious, right? Because we want to introduce democracy in a corporate, and I still believe quick solution is still the priority. And I am thinking, if I want to move away the either or conversation, what is an option for me? So I'm thinking, because revenue is still very important for me, can I make it in a way that when it's not about life and death, we can hear more opinion? When it's become like the market or the customer is putting on the pressure, we need to make a quick decision, then I will say that. Then I share what I experience, and I ask for a quick solution. And therefore, ask your permission not to deviate, and talk about different things, and help us to make a decision. And on some occasion, when I feel that there's slack or room for discussion, then maybe open up the floor.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what would happen in your office after our conversation.
Well, that's impossible to know, but the idea of looking for I'm gonna let go of the working remote thing, but essentially the possibility of having different conversations for the sake of the conversation. That's something that feels close at hand, that it could change. Because that's not really something that we do. We're so solution oriented that the conversations are solution based. That we don't take the time to have those kind of exploring conversations, which builds relationships, that allows for new exploring conversations where it matters. It's easy to have the expectation that if you take dialogue into consideration, then you want to apply dialogue when it matters. But I make up that's when it can't happen, because that's a very solution-driven context.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that at least in my own culture, it's still very solution-driven and fixing oriented. I see a light, like what I shared earlier. If the situation allowed to have more diverse opinion or more exploring, let's have it. And as we explore this topic about deliberate conversation in a corporate setting, I kind of sense that if we can make distinction of various conversations we have, I think I like the idea that when you say that when dialogue is important or maybe essential, then we can consider allowing it, or better, put things on a table and let all the participants making a decision, right? Rather than one person say that this should it be a dialogue or not, or making a quick decision. I think it's a bit of more different shades of gray, rather than yes, we want quick solution, or no. It's more of different shades of gray.
Yeah. 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 And those shades of gray influences how we show up when things really matter, or when we're pushed to finding a solution or choosing a solution.
I think earlier part I talk about assumption and belief. I wonder what assumption and belief that I need to have so that I can allow different shades of gray.
I think one assumption that is really close at hand is that some people aren't able to have those kind of conversations, or some people aren't interested in having those kind of conversations. And I think a lot of those assumptions based on trying to kind of coming from a good place and having a conversation, but showing up in the wrong way, so that you get kind of not good responses, and then you just fill the gaps and assume that people can't have those kind of conversations. But I think if we are able to show up in the right way, a lot of cases are just going to fall flat, and there's going to be a possibility to have those kind of conversations. We just don't go there. And we're kind of back to what we talked about earlier, that it's easy to put the responsibility on someone else, that they can't handle the conversation, so I can't go there. But that assumption means that I show up in a certain way. I'm not taking responsibility to be able to bring the conversation.
I think you bring a very important point. Like if I have the assumption or the belief that they can't handle the different shades of gray, then I'm less inclined to try it. And going forward, I want to try this strategy. I want to ask for permission to explore. Let's say we are talking about revenue, and I sense that the challenge may not be black and white. Yes, it may appear as revenue challenge. It might be related to our culture, of our strategy. So it's more than revenue. And I want to try in the next conversation, if we have revenue challenge, I want to ask I want to share what I observe. I want to ask to have permission to explore further or further and deeper, and try not to make a decision based on what I already have. So kind of like more curious about the other party position. And I also recognize that some people may not like it, right? I'm sure there are people who say that why you ask this question, even permission, and people they may just say that just make a decision, right? And in the past, I feel very frustrated. And going forward, maybe I want to share a potential possibility from exploring. The person may not agree or couldn't see it. And if I offer a few times, maybe some of them may want to try. I mean, I know that habit die hard. It's not something that can be changed like a snap of a finger. So it's actually, to me, when we share about different shades of gray, it's also about me. What is my stance? Am I on one corner or there's different positioning?
Yeah. Yeah. So in one hand, you have assumptions, and that just got me thinking about our own biases. Like when we're looking for a certain solution or pushing our ideas, we have biases, but we might not be aware of them. So even if you pose the question, if it's okay to explore, we have to be quite clear about our biases so that we don't open an exploration door to be able to argue or push our biases agenda in a hidden way.
Yes.
Because
I think
exploring is a door opener, but that's the door opener to try to achieve something still.
yes. You highlight another thing we need to have besides allowing different shades of gray is awareness of ourselves. I think that's even a bigger topic, right? It's no longer about whether is it the conversation or not, or whether is it in corporate. I think we have talked close to 45 minutes. I want to offer this question. What's new that I discover about myself? Maybe I offer that my old habit of black and white is still very alive. And this business of shades of gray, this business of different shades of gray, is a bit like, walking on a tightrope and with many things on my hand. It's kind of like I will feel uncomfortable And I realized the juggling part is what I need going forward, because it's beyond going back to office or not. It's beyond going back. It's not about, it's more than deliberate conversation or not in corporate. It's about my ability to handle complexity. So that is something that calling my attention.
Yeah. I go in the same kind of direction, but I'm thinking about categories. Like when you relate to talk about these kind of things, it's easy to use categories where it makes sense, but at some point you're coming to the edge of your own kind of sense-making box, and then it falls apart, or you don't look at it and argue with yourself in that, outside of that box. You're staying within the box that makes sense already, and we all have the edges of what we can hold on to where things become difficult.
Can I hold you for a bit?
Yeah.
Just now when you share, you say you and we. So my prompt is, based on our 40-minute conversation, what is new that I learned about myself?
I'm not sure.
You
Well,
say you're not sure, right?
Yeah. So yeah, what's new, coming up new for me is that it's I'm very inside my box. But stepping outside of the box is much harder than you think, because when you enter the borderland, that's when the reasoning falls back to kind of the controlling assumption world. But you're not really aware, because you're applying the thing that is inside the box. So maybe the awareness is that that happens.
I want to acknowledge your sharing, because we all have the box, and what I share just now is about a desire to test the box.
Yeah.
Using different shades of gray. I think that's what the word that I use. And like we shared earlier, the awareness is important. And I want to acknowledge that I wouldn't be successful the first attempt, maybe. It's more of me aware that, do I fall back to my own box? I think it's not about whether the other are coming out of their box. It's whether am I allowed myself to come out of my own box, because I can't really control the other party behavior or the assumption, belief. I can only work with my own box and make it bigger, maybe different color or different shapes.
Yeah. And it's almost like a rubber band relationship, that you start to hold on to these things that you can't really hold on to, and then you notice that you apply the same thing, and then you go back, and it's just a back and forth. But the interesting part is that I think the emotional attachment to things play into that more than we might think, that in the spaces where we're comfortable with just kind of lingering, not applying reasoning, that's at least from my perspective, that's where I've become more emotionally detached from outcomes and what is, and this edgy thing is where I still have emotional attachments, where I fall into wanting to force and apply my box onto that box. So I'm more close to the possibility of discovering the nuances in those areas.
Well, I want to acknowledge your desire, and maybe I want to share a bit of the reason why I want to test or expand the box, or maybe being more able to recognize different shades of gray. For me, the personal reason is I see the future is going to be much more volatile than what I experienced in the past 20, 30 years. I don't see that going forward, it will be back to the old days. Of course, there are many reasons. That's how I make sense of the future. And just for the present, I feel that my box is already too small. Even though it's very comfortable for me, I still feel that it's too small, because even look at the current situation, right? It's still calling me to expand the box, try it, and maybe I fall down, try again. So it's more like beyond my reasoning, it's calling me to try again to expand the box.
So what is it that calls out to you to keep trying to expand the box? What's the driving force?
You see, as I share that what happened in the past 20 plus, 30 plus years, I sense that I can't go back anymore. First, there's no possibility. It is what it is at this moment, right? COVID-19 gave me a very good lesson. No matter what I wish to be, COVID-19 is here. And now it seems that we are safe because we have the vaccine or whatever medicine we have. I already know that the virus will mutate. I don't know when. And then in a few years' time, maybe this is called XXB, something like that. And then we back to lockdown, maybe office. So it's kind of like my intuition is telling me that whatever I experienced in the past 20 plus, 30 plus will not be back. And the future is going to be possibly very different. And since I cannot predict the future, why don't I try to prepare myself? So it's like preparing for uncertainty by aware that which box am I in, or how big is my box. I mean, I don't have to be correct. I want to experience the stretchiness, because my sense telling me that that's what I need to have.
Yeah, my perspective on that is that there's a deep knowing that the most satisfying and most kind of gratitude-filled moments is when the box expands, and knowing that the box as it is there is the resistance towards finding the next better thing. for myself, which is interesting because the resistance to let go of the box is preventing me from going there, but the drive to push the boundaries that I want to be able to let go of what's in the box. So there's a relationship that is both pulling me in both directions at the same time, but the drive is that it's so rewarding to be able to let go of a perspective or expand an perspective or gain another perspective. You don't have to discard whatever you have to gain another one. So that, I think for me, that's the driving force, which fits into anything.
So
it's still filled with fear and resistance.
Yes. I want to recognize this stickiness of the resistance, and so I want to offer the next question. What might we try to lessen the stickiness?
I think it's connected to recognizing that it's okay to lose control and to repeatedly try to challenge it in small ways. I'm thinking also that depending on where your focus is spent, that's what gains momentum. And if we resist, then typically we spend our mental capacity on holding on to the resistance or the aspects around the resistance, and the resistance grows. On the other hand, you have kind of the idea of whatever it might be that you want to change or what you want to achieve. That's big, so that also feeds into resistance. So I'd say just find a small thing that might seem like insignificant and do that, and keep doing that, and see what happens. Just to make it less rigid. That makes sense.
Yes. I think we share an idea of starting small and to lessen stickiness of my old habit. I want you to be my accountability partner, because this habit that I have has been around for many years, God knows how long. And I acknowledge it won't go away like snap of the finger. It may take some time. So I don't know how long it takes. And with you as my accountability partner, it's kind of like putting a boundary. Or not, what would say putting a boundary? Kind of like I'm aware that I have a responsibility. Like whether I forgot, I ignore, or whatever my reaction, I'm aware that I have a responsibility. I agree that this is the new behavior I want to cultivate, and I would like you to be my accountability partner. So that's approach that I want to take to lessen the stickiness of my old habit.
Yeah. Challenge accepted. and the other way around, and I already sense that you're a good person to challenge my resistance and stickiness, which you've already shown. So yeah, so same thing.
Yes, I actually glad that we have this deliberate conversation. We have talked close to over 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share to close the session?
There's one thing that I'd like to share, kind of the feeling of having a conversation like this that doesn't have an agenda and you're not trying to achieve something, it changes something. And for me, it's a bodily sensation. I can feel kind of there's something shifting. It's not easy. It's impossible to say what it is, but it's going back to the resistance and the rigidity in our being. It's kind of loosening up the rigidity of who I am.
Yes.
That's what happens in these kind of conversations. Yeah, it's a massage of the soul.
So my takeaway is there are many things are happening in my thought. It may not happening in reality. And I want to have the habit of checking with my thought. Is this real or is this what I make up? Thank you. Thank you for having me in this practice for deliberate conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Thank you.